Today I want to talk to you about having an upside down perspective. What do I mean? You might recognize this tune that they sing on Purim. V'nahapoch, 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 v'nahapochu, which means, and it turned upside down, and it turned upside down. The Megillah, the Purim story tells us at some stage, when God made a miracle, turned everything upside down. In which way? Till then, Haman wanted to kill the Jews and hang Mordechai. By the end, the Jews were safe and Haman was hung. So it was a full 180, and that's why V'napachu, upside down. And that's one of the reasons that we dress up on Purim, to be upside down, a bit crazy, topsy-turvy. Now, most years, most adults are very uncomfortable dressing up. It's not exactly cool to dress up. Usually the people that walk dressed up, let's be honest, it's the people that are a bit unconventional. Like, ooh, it's not my kind of style. Even for me, I have to say, for me dressing up, every year I get harassed. Rabbi, you're dressing up. For me, like if I put on a cowboy hat and a t-shirt, I already feel like, like I've totally dressed up. It's the comfort zone. It's not pleasant. I was thinking to myself this year, we need a little upside down in our lives. Let me explain. I'm not going to make a headstand, first of all, because I don't know how to, and also because it's a bit weird to do it. But imagine me upside down. Imagine, seeing the world through backwards, upside down. What does it do to somebody? What it does to somebody is they literally, whatever seems up now comes down. Whatever seems down now comes up. Okay, guys, that was just because, for Purim we have to do something. Now, I sometimes wonder if maybe when we see the world from downside up, maybe that's actually the real way to see the world. In other words, when you make a sandal sauce, when you make a headstand, or when you're just laying down and you're looking back like that, you're seeing the world upside down. But maybe sometimes that's important. Maybe we see the world in such a way that is too rigid, and maybe there's a different way to see reality. They say that astronauts who fly to space and see the globe, they struggle after that. Many of them struggle to, with the perspective they had. They managed to stay outside the world and see how everything's so small, and now they come back into this world and everyone's turning small things into big things. They really struggle. Sometimes when you see the same thing from a different perspective, it allows you a whole fresh perspective. And that's quite disorientating. Maybe that's why people say L'chaim on Purim, because they're disoriented. But what's my point? My point is like this. Maybe it's time to see things in a different perspective. Maybe it's time to let go of some of the ways we see the world, v'napachu, and see it upside down. Let's talk about a few examples. After a year of being in lockdown, after a year of taking a lot of our freedoms being taken away by COVID, we don't necessarily see life with the same optimism and freedom and dreams that we once did. I saw this meme going around. My mom said, go chase my dreams, so I went right back to bed. Before COVID, you told someone chase your dreams, it sounded somewhat, reasonable. Today, you tell somebody go chase your dreams, and you're like, what dreams? I could barely get on a flight. I can barely get out of my house. So over the past year, our world has become limited, tighter, scripted, conscripted. In other words, we became tight. And we started seeing the world through much tighter eyes. It had upsides, as we spoke about in yesterday's shir, but it also has downsides. There's a famous statement from our sages that says, I think that Ibn Ezra, one of the great Sephardic sages of the Middle Ages, teaches that the Jewish people who left Egypt were unable to be the generation that would go into Israel, because a generation that was conditioned to see the world in the eyes of a slave is unable or almost impossible to see the world through eyes of a free man. And therefore the generation had to die, because there was no way that they can make that jump. It's not a condemnation of them, but rather it's a statement of how conditioning is so powerful, that when you're in a certain condition and you see the world a certain way, it's very hard to transform. God gave the Jews a chance, but as we see in the Torah, the desert, the Jews were just failing time and time again. They could not adapt to the new way of seeing life. So over the past year, we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to see the world a bit pessimistic, to see each other as a threat. Not in a bad way, but like, yeah, if I'm too close to you, that's a threat. To see physical touch as like a fantasy. To see a cough as like the end of the world. Actually, according to tradition, until the first thousands of years of history, till Noah was born, the way people would die is that they would have a sneeze and they would die. And after that, he prayed to God that shouldn't be like that, and it changed. And that's why till today, when somebody coughs, I'm sure you saw it with your mother, they used to say zum gesund, to health. Why are you saying zum gesund for a cough? What's the big deal? A sneeze? Tschu, Gesundheit. Why? Because once upon a time, that was actually a sign of death. Anyway, the point is, this year we become super cautious about each other. We become paranoid. We've become a bit dependent on government in a way that, like, if you would tell me 5 years ago that the government would tell us when we could go in and out of our houses, when we could walk into shul, you would say that that's a dictatorship. And now we follow the government. Now, it's not a bad thing. I'm very pro following the law. But conditioning, what it's doing to us is it's making us, in our head, less free people. It's become normal. Okay, we listen to the Monday night speech from the president. The president says boo, and we say boo. He says ooh, we say ooh. We become conditioned to become much more docile. South Africans were always proud to say that, like, some of the people were like, that the reason they live over here is because the law is a bit more fluid than a place like Australia. Well, we become pretty law-abiding citizens this past year. Now, that's not a bad thing. That's not a condition that we want to break out of. But we've changed. And part of the change has been positive. It's made us more grounded, hopefully made us more humble. But it's also conditioned us in negative ways. That's what life does. And Purim comes and says, let go. Go bananas. If you need, even say a l'chaim or two. Dress up like an absolute crazy person. But for one day, shift the world and the way you see it. See the world through an upside down perspective. See the world from a loose, silly perspective rather than a rigid, put together perspective. See the world from a joyous perspective. See the world from an optimistic perspective. See the world differently. And this has been every year. Purim is a 2,500-year-old holiday. But especially this year, exactly a year since COVID started. COVID, really took over our lives immediately after Purim. So this is like the final Chag that we're celebrating in COVID, a full cycle a year. Purim's coming to us and saying, okay. COVID's here, and unfortunately it's here for a little bit. For one day, Just one day. Try to shake your world up. Try to do something crazy. You know, people go to courses with Tony Robbins and they walk on coals and they crack bricks with their bare hand and they do other crazy stuff. They're taught to believe they could do the impossible. But that's what Purim does in a much more spiritual way. Purim comes and says, Levi, I know you think you know yourself. I really think you do. But this one day, can you see yourself differently? Can you do something so out of your comfort zone, so maddening, and so something that's like so crazy? That's what Purim is. It's a crazy day. We're told a person's supposed to be so knocked out that they can't tell the difference between cursed is Haman, blessed is Mordechai. We're told people dress up, people have parties, people say l'chaim. It's a mad day. Why? Because sometimes you need to go mad. Sometimes you have to. I remember hearing a story about a great sage. I don't know who he was. I don't know if the story happened or it's apocryphal. But the story goes like this. That there was this great rabbi somewhere, sometime in history, and he had a deal that every day for a half an hour he would lock himself in his room and nobody could bother him. 4:30 to 5 in the afternoon, nobody could bother him. And of course that made everybody curious. What in the world is the rabbi doing for a half an hour? Is he talking to Elijah the prophet? What is he doing? Anyways, one person hides in the room and he's peeking through the cupboard. He wants to see what the rabbi comes in at 4:30 exactly, takes off his jacket, takes off his hat, and starts acting like a total crazy person. Climbs the chair, sits up, stands down, up, down, knocks his head, bangs the wall, makes sounds. He's like, what? Like, what is going on? Eventually, after 10-15 minutes of this madness, he bursts out. He says, Rabbi, I can't believe you're doing this. And the rabbi obviously was furious. Like, what are you doing in my room? So he says, Rabbi, you got to explain. You're like, seriously, man? Like, is it like an alter ego of a madman? Like, what's going on? The rabbi says, listen, the honest truth, I'm a human being. I know you think I'm not, but I am. And for 23 and a half hours, I have to play roles. I have to play the role of a rabbi, I have to play the role of a father, of a husband, of a teacher, etc., etc. But inside, I'm still a terrified little kid, and I'm getting overwhelmed. And if I don't give myself a release to actually let go of my madness, I'm actually going to go crazy. So you might say that's not the smartest way to do it. You could have gone to a gym, fine. But that was his way of releasing tension. What's the point? The point is, sometimes the only way to be normal is to be crazy. Think about that. The only way to be normal is to sometimes be crazy. To just let it go. To let go of all the tension of this year. To let go of the frustration and disappointment. But instead of letting it go in a woe is me, I'm feeling so miserable. Gosh, I can't believe it. That's Tisha B'Av. Purim is a very different kind of release. Purim is coming and saying, guys, just go crazy. You know what? The post-matric party, but then you were 18, so it wasn't like you didn't go too naughty. The 21st birthday, when you finish college, Israelis do it after they finish the army. You know, the time that you feel like you've built up tension over a long time and now you have a release and now you just go bonkers. Purim comes and says, do it, but in a spiritual way. Don't be naughty, don't do things that are inappropriate, but go, just stop being so rigid. Stop being so sophisticated. Stop taking yourself so seriously. I know you have roles to play, and I know you think you're cool, and most of the day you are cool, and you have and you can't sit there, acting like a total crazy person. You're a mom, and you're a wife, and you're a boss, and you're a friend, and you're a mentor, and you're a therapist, and you're a this and a that. Yeah, we get it. But once a year, Purim, can you make a summer sauce? Can you flip over? Can you just let go? For me, I have like a mini such experience every time I get on a flight to New York. Over there, I have to go play different roles. I'm a son, I'm a brother, but I'm not a father, I'm not a husband. I'm there when I call on the phone, but ultimately, the day to day, I'm not playing the role of father, husband, or rabbi. And like every time I just sit on the plane, like the moment I'm on the plane and there's no members, like the worst thing ever is like, hey Rob, where you going? I'm like, oh gosh, why me? But like if you're alone and there's no role to play, it's like it doesn't mean that we resent our role. We love it, but every piece of clothing sometimes needs to be taken off. Every role sometimes just has to be like, okay, breathe. I can't just be a grandfather every day. I can't just be a grandmother. I can't just be the wise person or the great accountant or the super organized or just roles are responsibilities. They weigh on us. And they're privileged. It's a privilege to be a husband. It's a privilege to be a father. It's a privilege to be a rabbi. It's a privilege to be a teacher. It's all a privilege. But it's still, it's a weight. And sometimes you just come and say, I'm done. For just a small little while, I'm out. And that's what Purim is. Purim comes and says, for one day a year, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the monotony of COVID. The last 12 months, like this predictable, in the house, and go on the shop, put on your mask, go back home, unpack, spray over your hands, take your temperature. I'm just done. Not that I'm gonna be lax, have to follow the protocols, have to be safe, but I'm done with just being, you could be in the mess, or you could walk through the mess but be your head above it. You could live in the sewer, or you work in the sewer, fine, you're in the sewer, but your head's somewhere else. After a year of this, we've become so entrenched that we're no longer living COVID, we're breathing COVID. It's affected not only, our habits of keeping our hands clean and taking our temperature and wearing masks, it's affected our very way of thinking. And that's too much. There's a famous principle in Torah that Torah says, even when you work, you have to remember God runs this world. So you work with your hands. In other words, don't invest every part of your brain in it. Your head has to be in spiritual things. Obviously, if you need your head to work, you put your head in. But your passion, your worldview is not affected by your work. Your worldview is affected by your spiritual worldview. Torah says, the effort of your hands is what gives you a living, not the effort of your head. Your head is in other places. So too, yeah, we have to follow COVID, fine. But you have to think about, breathe it, live it, obsess about it. Enough. There's a Jew that one time, he used to work in galoshin. Some of you know what galoshin are. Galoshin are like the stuff that people wear in climates where there's snow. You put on these rubber, it's a rubber covering on your shoe, a rubber boot. And in the shtetl, everybody had galoshin. That was the only way. Otherwise, you walk with your leather shoe. You'll sit there slipping and sliding all over the place, and your shoe will get ruined. So everyone wore galoshin. So there was once a Jew who did a very good business with galoshin. He was doing extremely well. But the problem is that he was becoming so obsessed with his business. So the story goes that one time he came to his wise mentor, his Rabbi, and his Rabbi turns to him and says, I've seen many feet in galoshin, but a cup in galoshin, I haven't seen. Like your head has to be in the, like Genukshin, fine, you make galoshin, wonderful. Make a lot of money, make a lot of galoshin. But your head has to be in the galoshin that's made for feet, not for head. Point is that after a year, after a lifetime, not only a year of COVID, after a lifetime, we've become so intertwined that we see the world only through the perspective that we've been trained to see. I gave a shiur on Tanya yesterday or 2 days ago, on the Tanya course, and there was this beautiful analogy that Rabbi Steinsaltz brings, where he says, when you're in school, 10-year-old girl, then your prism, the way you see reality, your perspective, your paradigm, is through a 10-year-old girl's world. Who's the coolest? Who has the coolest parents? Who has the most money? Who's clever? Who's sporty, etc. Then you're 15. It's like, oh my gosh, who got the best boyfriend? And who's the so slick and has good taste of fashion? Whatever. That at each stage, you develop status based on what everybody agrees is status. So you have like almost a collective agreement that that's what status counts for. But then one day you wake up and you realize that's not that status, that was just in your mind, and there could be a totally different status. It often happens to people who emigrate. You suddenly go to a different culture, you move to another country, and what everyone in your country that you emigrated from thought was important, over here they don't. But over here they discovered something else important. I always give the example, when I grew up in New York, the car you drove meant nothing. Most wealthy people didn't even own cars. It's not worth it. You have to park it in double-sided parking. It's a madness. It's a craziness. You just needed a practical car. No one cared what you drive, where you drove. Most of the time you took the subway anyway, especially with Amazon. Everything gets delivered to your house. Who needs it? Came to South Africa, discovered that a car is a statement of status. It's nicht pasha. It's not simple. First of all, has to be a color, has to be a slick company. Anything less than a Mazda 6 is take nicht. And if you can afford it, anything less than an Audi or a Porsche, and you wash it once or twice a week, and you take care of it, and you polish it. When I grew up, all I knew about polishing is polishing shoes, but I discovered there is a thing called polishing your car. Once it cooked ice, it's unbelievable. Now, I don't think it's more shallow than New York. I would say in many ways New York is more shallow. But that's not the point. The point is over here in South Africa, at some stage it became a consensus. It became an agreement, a cultural agreement that cars say about your status. So often you'll see a person who drives a beautiful car, but their house is very average. A nice house in Orange Grove, but the car is like a $500,000 car. And 1 second, your house is barely worth 1.5 million rand, 2 million. Your car is worth 500,000 or 800,000. Your car is 25% worth of your house. Doesn't that seem a disproportionate to you? No, what do you mean? Really? Well, somehow in this country it makes sense that a car has a quarter value of your house. Where I grew up, where houses are worth $1 million, and the average car is $20,000 or even less, you're like, that's a very different proportion. The point is that over here it suddenly became normal that you pay for your car a monthly installment of the quarter amount that you pay for your house. Really? Okay, fine. That's what the culture agreed on. What's the point? The point is, just like the culture agreed on to see it this way, they could agree to see it that way. V'napachu means to come and sit there saying, yeah, that's the way everybody sees it, but is it objectively true? Is it true? I don't know. I'm not saying you have to be the odd one out, the dafkenik, to be, oh, I don't care, everyone lives this way, I'm dafken out. No, that's just called being, odd one out, dafkenik. That's not the point. But the point is, just because you don't have to be the odd one out, doesn't mean you have to buy into the local culture, hook, line, and sinker. Stay outside the culture. Just like you look at your daughter or granddaughter at 15 who's obsessing about all the stuff, and deep down you know that's not important. For her it's important, but you know that 5 years time she'll grow up and she'll realize, oh my gosh, my friends don't like me. I always tell the boys in the high school that have dynamics. I say, I promise you in 5 years time you're never going to talk to each other again. Maybe one or two of you. But you might see each other at the 40th year reunion and you'll say, oh, David, it's you! That's as much as the relationship you're going to have. So please don't take their opinion of you right now so seriously, because they're very inconsequential in the bigger picture of your life. But they don't see it that way. What's me? Right now, all I care about is the 15 kids in my class, what they think about me. And I'm not cool enough. Nobody wants to be my boyfriend. And you're like, yeah, but maybe the guy you marry is not even remotely in the school. Maybe I don't want you to marry anybody in the school. And chances are it's somebody on the other side of the planet. And I don't care that you don't have a boyfriend. It doesn't say anything about you. But that's not the way she or he sees it at that age, because they're only seeing it through the paradigm of being 15. We see the world through the paradigm of being a year in COVID as adults in South Africa, etc., with all the various circumstances of our life. But maybe some of the ways we see life is just messed up. Maybe it's just not healthy. Purim comes and says, put on a mask, do something crazy, and maybe see the world through different eyes. Maybe, just maybe, you'll actually be happier that way. You know, maybe, just maybe, you'll be a happier and more graceful person if you do something crazy, like this. Okay, like, yeah, okay, Rabbi, this is getting awkward, but what's my point? My point is that even doing this to myself in imagination, that's what, Zoom allows you to do, for a moment, it just makes me, like, let go, like loose, like, okay, this is crazy, but do something. This year, Purim, don't be an alcoholic, don't end up on the floor, but do something over the 24 hours to change our perspective, to see the world through eyes that are lighter, brighter, more fun, more loose, more confident, just different. And throughout the year, can we challenge ourselves to stand sometimes outside the box, to be a journalist rather than a participant. Most of life it's important to be in the world and not be a journalist outside. But sometimes it's important to be a journalist of your own life and look at it and say, okay. I don't necessarily buy into this stuff. I have my own mind. To have our own mind, to not be a goat, is an incredible achievement of a human being, to not just follow. Okay, what next? What? Tell me what to do next. Yes, sunshine. Because as I said earlier, that's one of the downsides of COVID, is we're just waiting for the next order of the government. Say boo, we say boo. Now, yes, we have to follow, but let's not become followers. If we have to follow because of COVID, fine, but don't allow that to change your personality, to change the way you see this world. Purim is here, and Purim comes and says, be crazy, be mad, have fun, do something that will totally turn you upside down. And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, it will make you happier. Have a great day.